Long live your turtle here. Can turtles cohabitate? Can they live together? Can they get along? Let's talk about it. All right, so this is strict supervision here. Watch Moses with Harold I just put in the tank. She's getting aggressive. She's checking out Harold, not liking what she's seeing. I don't want them to get any closer. Moses will snap. Look at that, she's coming all the way to the surface. Get this Harold out of here. All right, sorry, Harold. Now, you can see what just happened there. Moses was not interested in Harold's existence in this enclosure. So big hint to the question I asked in the beginning of the video, which was, can turtles live happily ever after together? The answer is complicated, but the suggestion is no. Which is funny because you can see right now, my two turtles are getting along totally right now. And these two girls will never fight, and they never have fought, and they've never been interested in each other, which is just one of those caveats where it's like, who knows? But a round of applause for a great demonstration. Let's talk about the specifics when it comes to turtles living together in the same enclosure. Can it be done? Sure, if you have enough space for two turtles in a tank, they can be together. Is it a good idea? Is it safe for your turtle? That's a whole nother question. Now, I've had turtles for over 10 years, and all my experience is coming from taking care of them from when they were hatchlings all the way up to their adult sizes now, dealing with their issues, as you could just see, not getting along together, and growing with them and nurturing them and providing them the best husbandry that I can. So from that experience and my own research, this is my general overview on cohabitation, but I'm in no way an expert or a scientist when it comes to my input here. It's a little more anecdotal, but I think it's really important, and I think it shows really what can happen when you have multiple turtles. All right, jumping in the time machine. When I first got my turtles, they were 3 little baby hatchlings, 1 inch apiece, and I had 2 red ear sliders and 1 yellow belly slider. Harold, maybe out of the screen here, Moses, and then Cracker's my yellow belly. They were all 3 little guys, and they all lived together at first. I had them in a 10-gallon tank, and as they grew, 20-gallon, 40-gallon, and then 75-gallon. 75-gallon is when they were almost adult size, and I was still in an apartment, so I really couldn't go bigger than that. But that's the time when I started to get a little nervous. And what I started seeing was Moses, my biggest slider. She is about 9 inches carapace length. At the time, she was a little bit smaller, but still the largest turtle I had. Started picking on poor, docile Harold, and they just started not getting along. Now, what I started seeing between the two, and these are very common forms of aggression between turtles, especially before it gets violent, is they will flutter their front claws at each other. This is actually kind of a mating ritual between male and female, but it can also be an aggressive tactic saying, hey, this is me, look at me, get out of here, I'm bigger than you, watch out for me. And that was actually kind of the first thing I started seeing between Harold and Moses. It was always Moses initiating and Harold kind of tucking in her shell and backing off. And I was like, oh, maybe they're just confused and they're all female, so they can't be making babies together. But, so at the time I didn't really think too much of it. And then a little bit later, I started noticing Harold was darting back and forth in the tank. And I was like, that's kind of weird. Is she gravid? So I gave her a nesting box, nothing happened. And she always just seemed to be wanting to escape. So one day I really sat down and watched for a while. And what I noticed was little creeping Moses started jawsing her way towards Harold in a very subtle but direct show of aggression. You could see that it was like she was going to attack. And the more I watched, the closer I saw, and she would slowly move in, and then she would snap at Harold. And Harold would do the obvious. She would freak out and swim around. Luckily, I never saw a good bite out of Moses into one of Harold's legs, which would have been awful. But this was going on for quite a while, and I was kind of seeing it as, oh, they're just existing together. So this is where it's very important to understand what you are seeing. When you see flutter like that, you have all females, all males, or it's between males and between females. That's a problem, that's aggression, and you need to be careful with that. Because obviously that led to something much worse, which was Moses literally trying to bite, essentially remove Harold from existence. Either Harold, get out of the tank, which he was even trying to do, or I'm going to keep biting you, and it's going to hurt, and it's going to get very dangerous for you. And unfortunately, when you have problems like aggression between turtles in your one tank, there's only two options here, and that is either upgrade your tank to be gigantic, we'll get to that in a second, or get another tank. So what I did was I got another tank. Now, this is a 210 gallon, so this is a huge upgrade. So that's why I have my two turtles that get along, Crackers and Moses, in this tank. And Harold got to stay in the 75, and she's about 7 inches in carapace length, so it's a great size tank for her. These gals are both 9 inches carapace length, so this 210 is great for them. So really, that's my story of my 3 slider turtles and how it came to be that there are 2 tanks because they simply didn't cohabitate well together. Now, I obviously haven't talked about someone that is doing great here, and that is Crackers. Moses, of course, is the aggressor here, and I think she's off screen, but Crackers is the embodiment of peace. She has had no issues with either of the turtles. Moses doesn't give a shell about her, and they've just been getting along forever. And I've actually noticed that since I've gotten Crackers, she's always been a little bit somewhere else. She's always kind of hung out of her shell. Even when I picked her up, she would just kind of dangle her legs, her head would hang out. She didn't really have any of those instincts, you know, bite things or hide in your shell like the other two do. They'll certainly do that, but Crackers, just whatever, dude. And you can see she's a little bit deformed on the shell. She's grown up in the exact same environments as my other two, which are very healthy shells, very healthy shapes. She's eating fine, she's basking as much as the other ones. So she's always been a little bit off. And maybe Moses picked up on this, just this Crackers turtle is absolutely not a threat. This is a little pseudo-science-y here, but there's never been an issue between those two turtles, so they can live in this giant tank together. But as you can see in the beginning of this video, even this big tank, adding Harold back to it, they haven't lived together for years. Instantly clashing. So let's think about some scenarios. Are you a new turtle owner and you're looking for multiple turtles in your tank, starting from scratch? Or are you someone that has already purchased multiple turtles and you're a little worried about what you're seeing or what the future might hold since you bought 2? Things I should have been thinking about when I bought mine. But here we are. So for the first question, if you're thinking about getting multiple turtles, I highly suggest you do not. And that is simply because unless you are ready to put them in a pond or a really big enclosure, you're gonna need multiple tanks. If you wanna do multiple tanks, go for it. But most people, when they're thinking about keeping their turtles lifelong, they're not thinking about dealing with the maintenance and the chaos of having 2 tanks that you have to move around if you live in apartments, or just taking up a lot of space in your house. Now, if you already have turtles and you are a little bit worried about what you're seeing as far as their behavior towards each other, definitely think about getting another setup going, because once they get aggressive, it continues, and it's a constant barrage of aggression towards the other turtle or towards each other. And one of them is going to get severely injured, so you do not want that, and you need to have a backup plan. And that can either be splitting them up or getting a gigantic enclosure. Like if you live in a warmer climate without harsh winters, get a pond. You can even get above ground pools, 400 gallons. Just put things in there so you can break the line of sight for your turtles so that they don't see each other all the time, and they'll probably be okay. I'm not going to promise anything, but as long as they have a big enough space where they're not staring each other eye to eye, being like, this is my territory, I am a solitary animal, and I want my food, and I want my space, I don't want someone else in it, you're gone. Break that aggressive concentration, and hopefully things will work out for you. But just watch out for those signs, and know your 2 solutions. But if you can't get 2 enclosures, you can't get a bigger tank, what I would suggest is thinking about putting some sort of divider down the middle of your tank to split them up just physically so they cannot get at each other. Of course, if you have large turtles, this will really limit the space that they're able to move around and live in. So really wouldn't suggest it if you have big turtles, but if you have smaller turtles, you could easily split your tank up. Just make sure you got 2 basking areas, 2 basking docks, and you should be all right. Now I know some people are very concerned about their turtle being alone in a tank, and I understand our human emotions are diving right into those little reptile brains, and we're just giving them this emotional life. But in reality, most turtles, all turtles, are solitary creatures. They do not need a community of turtles around them. They do not count on their friend to be in the tank with them. They, of course, will interact with each other because they're in the same space. It's definitely a form of stimulation, but it's not like a dog wanting an owner or even a cat wanting some pets. Your turtle does not need any of that to be happy and flourishing in their environment. They can be, as long as you set up their tank with interactive features such as logs and a substrate they can move around, and maybe some fish that they can follow and maybe bite once in a while, they're going to be perfectly happy. They don't need turtle buddies. They don't need turtle friends. They are perfectly happy within their solitary lives. And that's it. I hope that gave you enough information to make the wise decision of whether or not to house multiple turtles in the same tank. Let me know what your guys' experience is. Have you seen turtle aggression before? Are your turtles living peacefully? If you like this video, hit that like button. Subscribe for lots of videos on DIY projects like how to set up your tanks. If you want the ultimate turtle basking solution, check out my turtle basker on my Etsy store. Like, subscribe, leave a comment. Thanks for watching, and long live your turtle.